My name is Jenna Morgan. I always thought that when this day came, I would cry tears of joy. That my name would be called out, someone would clap me on the back and say, "You did it." That someone would run up with flowers, pull me into a tight hug, laughing and crying in the suit I reserved their seat for 3 months ago. But instead, I stood there under the blazing sun of the Illinois State Police Academy Stadium with a blue beret in my hand, my uniform freshly pressed to every crease, and a hollow ache in my chest that even the May sunlight couldn't warm. I heard my name echo through the loudspeaker. Cadet Jenna Morgan, Academic Excellence Award, Class Leader, Valedictorian. The entire stadium erupted. Hands waving, whistles ringing, warm eyes following every step I took to the podium. I nodded formally, bowed to the board, and received the honorary diploma that had cost me blood, tears, and countless nights of training in snowstorms. Then I turned and saw, right there in the front row, 2 empty seats where my parents should have been. I had put their names there. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan. I sent the invitations. I called to remind them. I truly believed that this time they would show up, but no one came. I stepped out of the line, pulled my phone from the chest pocket of my uniform, and called my mother. She picked up after 3 rings. On the other end was the sound of ocean breeze, laughter, glasses clinking. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice light like she was calling from a tropical vacation. "We're on a cruise with Vanessa. You know, she just got hired by CNN. We didn't think you'd actually go through with this police thing." The words were effortless, without hesitation or regret. As if everything I had endured, nearly a year of grueling training, simulated fights, bruises, physical and written exams, was just a passing hobby, not worth their attention. I went quiet for a few seconds. Memories rushed through my head like a reel in reverse. All the times they forgot me at ceremonies, the family dinners that revolved solely around my sister's achievements, the constant comparisons that never stopped. Vanessa is the star. She's made for the spotlight. And Jenna? She's just stubborn. Maybe they had always decided I'd never make it to the end, but here I was, alone. And finally sure that their absence no longer hurt me, it only made clearer what I needed to do. I held the phone to my ear one last time and said, in a voice softer than the sea breeze, "Enjoy the view, because you won't be seeing me again." Then I hung up. I didn't say anything else. I walked back to the stage, straight to the 2 empty seats I had reserved, and gently placed my diploma on one of them. The diploma with my name, signed by the academy director, sealed with the golden emblem of the state, soaked in my blood and tears, now resting there like a final message. No noise. No need for a reply. Because I already had my answer. And it had never been clearer. Have you ever felt like the only one left behind in your own family? If you have, let me know, where are you watching this story from? So I know I'm not alone in this world. I was born and raised in Evanston, a quiet city on the shores of Lake Michigan, less than an hour's drive from downtown Chicago. It's the kind of place where rooftops are painted uniformly by neighborhood, lawns are neatly trimmed, and everyone knows each other's names from PTA meetings or weekend barbecues. But behind that order and calm was a house where expectations hung like gallery art, beautiful, precise, and suffocating. My father was a technical manager at a local mechanical plant, a stable, practical job that allowed him to proudly say he was fulfilling his duty as a man. He was the type who believed everything in life had its proper place. Daughters should be gentle, safe, and stable. To outsiders, he seemed like a quiet, hardworking, sensible father. But to me, he was a concrete wall, immovable whenever I tried to step outside the mold he built for me. My mother was different. She used to be a high school art teacher, someone who preferred discussing life philosophy over emotions, and believed that beauty should come with grace, not sweat and blood. She was gentle, composed, but always chose silence whenever something disappointed her, especially when it came to me. I was never the one meant to stand out in my family. I was the shadow on the sidelines, the quiet backdrop to every animated conversation about the pride of the family, my older sister, Vanessa Morgan. Vanessa always knew how to draw attention. She was speaking fluently by age 3, dancing by 4, joined the school broadcast team in middle school, and became editor of the student newspaper before she turned 15. In my parents' eyes, she was programmed to walk the perfect path they envisioned: bright, graceful, sociable, and most importantly admired. I was different. Since I was little, I never fit into tea parties, never performed well on command, and certainly didn't know how to smile at the right time. I liked boxing. I liked running alone at 5 in the morning. I liked taking things apart around the house just to see how they worked. Once, I covered my bedroom door with sticky notes and staged a mock crime scene like in a detective show. I excitedly told my mom I wanted to become an investigator. She sighed and walked away, saying only one thing: "Girls in this family don't crawl around in the dirt like that." When I seriously told my father I wanted to apply to the police academy, he wasn't angry, he just gave a dry laugh, shook his head, and said, "If you become a cop, don't tell anyone you're my daughter. It's embarrassing." That sentence, I never forgot it. I grew up in a house where every step I took was examined under a distorted light. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough, it was that I wasn't what they wanted. My sister wore evening gowns, I wore training pants and practiced power kicks. She was praised for being confident and charming. I was called difficult and rough. No one stood by me at parent-teacher conferences. No one sat in the audience when I competed in taekwondo. When I won a state-level medal, the only thing my mother asked was, "Did anyone punch you in the face?" I learned to live with silence. Learned to swallow my sighs every time I saw my mother's eyes light up when Vanessa got into NYU for journalism while I had to fill out my own application and ride the bus to the police academy. I didn't blame them for loving my sister more. I just wondered, why does love have to be conditional? The day I received the acceptance letter from the Illinois State Police Academy with a full scholarship, I ran into the kitchen, holding the letter up, eyes full of hope. My mom was making salad. She didn't look up, just said, "Oh, just be careful not to overdo it and get injured." I laughed, but inside, I felt hollow. No one came with me to move in. There was no farewell dinner, no hug. I arrived at the academy alone with an old suitcase and a phone without a single message of encouragement. 3 months later, when I got injured during an intense training drill, dislocated shoulder, cracked bone, I lay alone in the infirmary, waiting 10 minutes before realizing no one was going to call me. And I had no one to call. That's when I started to understand. Some people are born into a family. As for me, maybe I was just staying in a house. And once you realize that, hope becomes dangerous. Because every time you hope, it's another cut you carve into yourself. But it was also then that I knew I had to see this through. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove to myself that I didn't need to be accepted to be worthy, I just needed to be myself. And if they couldn't love a Jenna in a police uniform, then I didn't need them standing beside me when I walked across the stage. 6 months before graduation, when the list of top graduates was announced, I froze. Not out of surprise, I knew I had given it everything, but because deep down, I still held on to a tiny sliver of hope that maybe this time would be different. Maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud. I handwrote a letter and sent it home, each word carefully formed like a first grader writing a Christmas card. In it, I told them I would be valedictorian, that I'd be honored on stage, delivering a speech to the entire academy, that it would be the most important day of my life. And if they ever wanted a chance, just one, to truly show up for me, this was it. I included 2 VIP tickets, a seating chart, and a prepaid hotel reservation right next to the academy, paid for with 3 months of savings from my part-time patrol shift. 3 days later, my mother texted me a short reply: "Got it. We'll be there. Don't worry." I wasn't worried. I let myself dream a little. Every night, after my late patrol shifts, I'd picture myself stepping out of the lineup, catching sight of my parents dressed to the nines, clapping loudly as my name echoed across the field. I even picked out a small gift to give them after the ceremony, a framed photo of me in uniform, with the inscription, "Thank you for not giving up on me even once." But then, 3 weeks before the ceremony, there were no messages from home. No calls, no flight confirmations. And on the very day I noticed their silence, I saw my sister's post on Instagram. Officially joining CNN New York as a junior producer. Grateful beyond words. In the photo, she stood posing in front of the CNN headquarters, proudly holding up her new ID badge, her face glowing like someone who's walked a red carpet since birth. The top comment was from my mother. "So proud of you, my star. You deserve the world." Below it, a flood of heart emojis, fireworks, and a comment from my father. "Our girl made it to the big league." I read every word, feeling like a slow knife was cutting into my chest. Not because my sister was successful, I was never jealous of that, but because they called that the big league, called that a world she deserved. And what about me? Law enforcement wasn't their world. My uniform didn't shine on television. The overnight shifts, the bruises from training, the times I walked into dangerous neighborhoods with nothing but a gun and my courage, none of it existed in their eyes. I didn't dare ask. I didn't dare confirm. I stayed silent, still hoping maybe they were just distracted and forgot to mention it. Maybe the tickets were still reserved. Maybe they'd still come. Until the ceremony began. As I sat under the slanted sunlight pouring over the cadet rows, I quietly made the call. My mother picked up. I heard the sound of waves, soft music, glasses clinking. Her voice was almost drowned out until she laughed and said, "Honestly, honey, we thought you'd quit halfway through like before. And we couldn't miss the cruise. Vanessa deserves this." I don't know what stunned me more. Her casual tone or the way she collapsed 4 years of my struggle into a single, careless prediction. "We thought you'd quit." As if I was someone who never finished anything. As if I were a shadow of myself, hesitant, unreliable, not worth believing in. And the reason they weren't here today? Because Vanessa deserves this. My sister, the one who already had everything, still deserved more. Still mattered more. Still was the one they chose. I don't know how long I stayed silent after she said that. All the noise around me seemed to fade. I could hear my blood pulsing through my fingers as they tightened around the phone. I had invited them with one last hope that just once, only once, they would choose me. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. The only person they ever chose was always the other one. And me, from beginning to end, I was nothing more than the backup plan that never got used. I didn't cry that day. Not because I was strong, but because I had nothing left to cry out. My pain no longer came in outbursts, it had hardened into calluses, thickened by every time I was forgotten. I bowed deeply when I received my diploma, shook hands tightly with the instructors who had been the toughest on me, then quietly walked out of the stadium. No celebration. No family photo. No sign saying, "We're proud of you." Just me, a waiting patrol car outside the gate, and my first night shift in Englewood, the south side of Chicago, what people call the red zone, for having the highest violence rate in the city. I walked into the precinct in a crisp new uniform, carrying the weight of 1,000 silent thoughts. The unit supervisor looked me over from head to toe and asked only one question. "You ready?" I nodded. No words needed. We don't come here to tell our own stories. We come to hear others, usually more tragic, more brutal, and try to save someone from becoming the next victim. That's my duty. The only reason I'm still standing. In the first few weeks, I threw myself into work like a drowning person clinging to shore. Each shift cut a little deeper into my defenses, but also, it was the only way I could begin to find myself again. I learned how to read the eyes of battered women who still said, "I'm fine." I learned to distinguish the cries of abandoned children from ordinary sobbing. I started to understand. I didn't need anyone in my family to validate me. I just needed to do my job, do it right, and do it well. I may not be the daughter they wanted, but I was an officer this city could rely on. One night in July, my team and I responded to a car crash. The vehicle had flipped, smoke everywhere, flames already reaching the back seat. A mother was screaming, "My baby's still in there." No one dared to enter the fire. But I didn't hesitate. I pulled off my helmet, crawled through shattered glass, and dragged the little girl out of her seat just seconds before the fuel tank exploded. My team screamed, yanked me out of the car like they were the ones on fire. I collapsed to the pavement, gasping for air, my uniform scorched, my face blackened by smoke, but the child was safe, alive, and clinging to me like I was the only person in the world. No one knew the moment had been caught on a taxi's dashcam nearby. But by the next morning, the footage of me carrying the child breathless, arms wrapped tightly around her like she was life itself, had gone viral. The media called me Chicago's quiet hero. Local newspapers dubbed me the new face of brave women in law enforcement. Interview invitations started coming in. A local television station wanted to feature me on the evening news. One producer even asked if I wanted to talk about my family. Surely, they said, I must have been raised by people who inspired courage. I smiled, shook my head, and replied, my family didn't make me. It was the absence of them that made me strong enough to become who I am. After that interview, I sent a formal request to HR to change the name displayed on my badge from Jenna Morgan to Jenna L. Stone. Stone, not to erase the past, but to remind myself that I was once a child left behind. But now, I'm a woman who knows how to stand using no one but herself as a foundation. And I don't need them to call my name, because the name I carry now is one I chose for myself. I thought I'd never have to see them again, at least not within the life I'd built for myself. I had created enough distance that I no longer waited for any form of acknowledgement from them. I had changed my name. I had carved a new path. I had buried everything connected to the name Morgan in a place no one could reach, not even me. But then, one night in September, just after I finished filing my shift report close to midnight, the door to the precinct swung open. The sound of polished leather shoes echoed on the tiled floor, and the officer at the front desk lowered his voice slightly as he said, "Someone's here to see you, Jenna." I turned around. My heart dropped for a moment before I could stop it. Standing in front of me, in the same charcoal gray suit as always, with that unreadable expression and the air of someone who still believed in his place in the world, was my father. He stepped forward, not exactly in a rush, but without the calm composure he usually carried. In his hand was a folded newspaper, but I could tell from the look in his eyes, this visit wasn't about me. He was here because of my sister, Jenna. He began, as if this meeting were just another social formality. Vanessa's in trouble. She's under investigation for leaking internal information from CNN. An unreleased segment got out, and things are bad. He hesitated, as if still trying to carefully choose a softer tone. Do you know anyone in the system? A confirmation? A testimony? Is there anything you could do to help her? I didn't respond right away. I looked at him for a long time. Under the dim neon lights of the precinct, his face looked older than I remembered. But his eyes, they hadn't changed. They weren't looking for a daughter. They were scanning for a solution. Not a single question about how I was doing. Not a word like, "How have you been?" Just a request. A plea, a favor. And I once again was merely a tool to fix the problem for the one they'd chosen from the very beginning. Finally, I spoke, slow and clear. I'm an officer of the law, not an accomplice. He paused, caught off guard, but tried to keep his voice soft. Jenna, she's your sister. She's really falling apart. Can't you have a little compassion? I found it almost funny. So funny, I had to press my lips tightly together to stop a bitter laugh from escaping. Sisters, I repeated, slowly. Where was she when I graduated? When I lay in the infirmary with a fractured shoulder, who came? When I risked my life to save someone who called to ask, "Are you okay?" Sisterhood only means something when it isn't used as an excuse every time someone needs a shield. I lifted my head and looked him straight in the eye. The whole family chose her from the very beginning. And me? I chose justice. The words cut through the room like a blade, cold, but fair. My father said nothing. No protest. No justification. He looked at me for a long moment, then gave a small nod, as if he finally understood that the door he had just walked through would never open again. And me? I didn't feel pain anymore. Not even anger. Just calm, like I had finally returned something I was never meant to carry. And this time, I was the one walking away no longer as a child waiting to be chosen, but as a police officer who had already chosen herself. I thought that after seeing my father, everything would be closed. I thought the last door to my past had been locked by my own will, by the strength I'd built day after day. But maybe those who once hurt you always believe they have the right to walk back in just because you didn't push them out the first time. 3 days after that cold conversation at the station, I had just finished a late shift and was walking toward the parking lot behind headquarters when I saw a figure standing under the dim yellow light. A shadow stretched from her heels up to her collar, leaning hard against a concrete pillar as if trying to cling to something steadier than herself. I didn't need 5 seconds to recognize it was Vanessa. She's still dressed like she was stepping out of a studio set, a fitted neutral-tone dress, red high heels that screamed for attention, and expensive perfume that hit my nose the moment I got close. Her hair was perfectly curled, her makeup trying to hold its form, but it couldn't hide the swollen eyes from crying or the smudged mascara she hadn't cleaned up properly. The face that once confidently spoke in front of cameras was now distorted by emotions she probably never thought she'd have to taste: anger, frustration, and fear. I was about to walk right past her as if she didn't exist, as if I had no remaining reflex for someone who once grew up under the same roof. But Vanessa stepped right in front of my car, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in a fury that boiled just beneath her skin. "You're getting famous, huh?" Her voice sharp, like a knife tapping glass. "That clip of you pulling the girl from the burning car made it all the way to Fox News. Your boss wrote a letter praising you. I heard it's getting more shares than CNN's feature." I stood still. No reaction, no nod, no shake of the head, no flicker of emotion. In my mind, only one sentence repeated itself. "This is no longer my sister. This is just a stranger wearing a familiar face, the same face that had pushed me to the margins time and time again, just to stand alone in the spotlight." She took a step closer, her voice suddenly sharper, as if my calm was more than she could take. "You think you're so noble, don't you? Like you don't need anyone. All these years, I was the one in front of the camera, the voice of this family. I was the one who brought recognition, reputation, pride to our name. And you? You're just the stubborn girl with a gun, wandering poor neighborhoods, cleaning up society's trash. You think one viral clip of a burning car erases all that? You think you can undo decades of perception just because someone called you a brave female officer?" Still, I said nothing. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the screenshot I'd saved from 6 months ago, a message from our mother on the day of my graduation. No apology, no congratulations. Just one cold, curt line. "Just don't embarrass us in that uniform." I held the screen out in front of Vanessa. No raised voice, no explanation. Just to let her see, to remind her that I never forgot, never forgave, and never once had the privilege of anything even close to fairness. Vanessa looked at the screen for a few seconds, then laughed, not the usual mocking laugh, but a brittle, forced one that cracked as it left her mouth. Then she spoke, softly, but unable to hold back the bitterness that bubbled up. "You must be happy now, huh? Seeing me fall, watching me lose everything. You must be thrilled to see your big sister under CNN investigation, torn apart on social media, the whole family panicking, trying to find lawyers. Right? I fall and suddenly, you're the one standing tall. Yeah, I bet you've waited a long time for this." I put the phone away. No sigh, no nod. But I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time, and the last, I let the truth leave my mouth. "You didn't need me when you were shining, so don't come looking for me now that you're falling." I didn't say it with triumph, I said it with a kind of relief, almost peace. As if, finally, I had shed the old skin. The weight of expectations, pain, duty, and silence that I had carried on my back for years, all in the name of sisterhood. I turned away. I didn't look back. I didn't hesitate. I heard the sharp taps of her heels echoing on the concrete behind me, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to know what else she would say, whether she'd cry or rage, accuse or beg for forgiveness. Because I was no longer there to receive anything from her. Behind me, Vanessa stood frozen beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, surrounded by expensive perfume and one brutal truth that not everyone will stay behind to shoulder the consequences of her selfish choices. And me? For the first time in my life, I walked away without carrying a single burden. No guilt, no entanglements, no apology I was still waiting to hear. No family obligation pulling me to turn around. And that was freedom. 2 weeks after that final encounter with Vanessa, I stood on the biggest stage of my young career, the main auditorium of the Illinois State Police Department conference. Over 300 officers from across the state sat before me, along with department leaders, chiefs, mayors, and local media. I wore the most formal uniform I owned, pressed to every perfect crease, with a stiff collar, my beret adorned with medals tight on my head, a silver blue honor ribbon on my shoulder, and a nameplate that gleamed under the lights. Jenna L. Stone, Officer of the Year. The badge on my chest caught the glow of the spotlight like a tiny star, but this time, it didn't blind me like that lonely graduation day years ago. Because today's light didn't come from anyone else. It came from within me. I walked up to the podium, hand resting lightly on the microphone. In front of me were hundreds of eyes waiting for something, a tribute, an inspiring story, a moment they would remember. But my speech lasted only 3 minutes. I didn't talk about my journey, didn't mention the past, and didn't say a single word about family. I spoke only about the people in the community I serve, about trust between law enforcement and civilians, and about my team, the colleagues I trust more than anyone who's ever shared my blood. No one needed to know how many times I had been left behind. No one needed to feel sorry. Because I had come far enough to no longer need understanding from those who never once tried to understand me. After the ceremony, I stepped out of the auditorium, removed my beret, and let the autumn wind of Chicago sweep through my hair and across my shoulders. The air smelled familiar, that crisp, slender chill the city carries when the seasons shift, mixed with the scent of wood from the trees lining the boulevard. I walked slowly toward the parking lot, heart light as if I had finally untied a knot that had bound me since childhood. But then, just 20 steps from the lot, I froze. A lone figure stood at the exit gate. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. Some part of me still reflexively recalled old faces. But this time, it wasn't a hallucination. It was my mother. She stood in a worn beige coat, holding a thick envelope tied with a silver ribbon. Her once perfectly styled black hair now tied low, streaked with visible white strands. She wore no makeup. No trademark smile. Just a mother, or at least someone trying to be one, standing in silence, uncertain if she still had the right to appear in my life. When I got closer, she didn't speak right away. Her eyes met mine, steady and unblinking. But the glow she once carried, the certainty that she was always right, was gone. All that remained in her gaze was something bare, exhaustion, regret, and the unmistakable weight of being too late. When I stopped, she gently extended her hand, offering me the envelope. Her hand trembled slightly. Her voice was hoarse, less an apology, more a quiet confession. "You don't need to forgive me, I know that. I just want you to know, I was wrong." I said nothing. I didn't need to. In my mind, memories played like a reel, forgotten birthdays, the times I came home bruised and no one asked why, the well wishes that were always meant for my sister, the days I held myself up with no one to catch me. Her voice continued, slower now and shaking. "I was afraid of what I didn't understand. And you were too brave to wait for us to change. By the time I realized it, you no longer needed us." I don't know how long it took her to say those words, and honestly, I don't know if I still believed any of it. But I did know one thing: I didn't need to hear it to move on. I didn't need anyone to confirm that I was worthy. I had learned how to stand on my own 2 feet, to dress wounds no one else could see, to build a home within my own heart where I was the last one to enter, and the one who would never leave again. I smiled a soft smile, without bitterness, without resentment, without waiting. I didn't take the envelope. But I didn't reject it either. I just looked at her. And with my eyes, I let her know, I'm okay, and I don't need her to do anything more to prove it. I turned and walked away. Not coldly. Not in a rush. But like someone who had finally taken off the invisible backpack worn since childhood, full of expectations, silence, and unanswered questions. Above me, the sky over Chicago faded into the amber-pink hues of sunset. The wind swept across my shoulders, but no longer felt heavy. In that moment, I was no longer the child left behind. I was Officer Jenna L. Stone, and I had learned how to be my own family. I walked along Michigan Avenue in the heart of Chicago as the city darkened. The city wasn't asleep. Streetlights stretched down the sidewalks like candles lit for a lone traveler. Across the street, the shadows of high-rises loomed. In the distance, a late bus honked, and beneath my feet the badge on my chest caught light from storefronts still open. I wasn't walking fast. I wasn't heading anywhere. I was just moving on an evening with no destination, as if I had finally been given permission to walk a path without ever needing to look back. The night breeze swept through my collar, cool and real. Everything now felt real, not something I dreamed, or imagined, or tried to paint prettier just to accept it. If you're watching this, and you've ever been the child no one called by name at graduation, ever sat alone with a small birthday cake because no one showed up, ever heard someone you loved say your dream was foolish or too dangerous, then I want you to remember this. Not everyone who carries the title of family deserves the place it holds. And not everyone who was absent during your most important moments is worth waiting for. Some victories don't come with glory or medals. They come from the simple act of daring to keep going. Even when you're alone, even when you have nothing, even when your heart has been mercilessly crossed out by the very people who were supposed to stand beside you. Maybe you didn't have anyone cheering for you at the starting line. Maybe no one clapped when you crossed the finish. But if you're still standing, still walking forward, still holding on to who you are in a world that keeps trying to define you on its terms, then you've already won. And no one can take that away from you. If someone ever mocked your dream, if they laughed when you said you wanted to be a doctor, a writer, an officer, a teacher, let your resilience be the only answer you ever need to give. You don't need to shout that you're worthy. Just live like you've always known it. And one day, your silence will become the loudest echo in their lives. And if you, like me, were once the forgotten child, just because you didn't fit the mold your family expected, then remember this. You weren't born to be chosen. You were born to choose. To choose yourself. To choose the path you believe in. To choose to become someone you're proud to see in the mirror, even if no one else is standing behind you. Because in the end, you're the one who stays with yourself. And when you're brave enough to keep walking, to let go of what's no longer love, then every step you take becomes a declaration. Not against them, but for yourself. That you are worthy. And you don't need anyone's permission to live a life of value. Thank you for listening. I'll see you again in the next story at 7 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. every day.